A river spirit walks onto land, and the balance of the world shatters. One man must choose between saving her life or sacrificing his own. An unforgettable story of love, fate, and supernatural danger. Don't forget to hit the subscribe bell. The river Maiden appears. The land of Alderaan was quiet that evening. Too quiet for a place known for noisy markets, playful children, and the endless clatter of village life. The air felt thick, restless, as if something ancient moved beneath the wind. Clouds rolled across the sky slowly, like spirits drifting around the moon. Even the birds that usually sang at dusk were nowhere to be found. Only the sound of the river carried through the trees, a low whispering, almost like a voice calling from a distance. Ethan walked toward that voice. His steps were heavy, his chest still aching from the battle he had lost 2 days before. His people praised him as a warrior, but he had not felt like one lately. His sword felt too light in his hands. The men he trained with looked at him with confusion and disappointment. He did not blame them. He blamed himself. He needed to clear his mind, so he walked toward the one place he believed the world could not disturb, the river of Alderaan, a place he had visited since childhood. The river was said to hold spirits and ancient mysteries, but Ethan did not fear those things. He feared only the weight inside his own heart. He stopped at the riverbank and stared at the water. It moved strangely that day, not flowing forward like usual, but swirling in slow circles as if stirred by invisible hands. The surface shimmered with an unnatural glow, a soft blue light rising and falling. Ethan frowned and stepped closer. He crouched down and touched the water with his fingertips. Felt cool, too cool for a warm evening. And then the wind stopped. Not slowed. Not quieted. Up. The leaves froze in mid-rustle. The tall grass stopped bending. Even the water itself became still and flat like polished glass. Ethan straightened slowly, every hair on his arms standing upright. The silence was so complete it pressed against his ears. Then he saw her. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. A shape glimmered beneath the surface, faint and ghostly. It rose slowly, breaking through the water without making a single ripple. A figure of a woman, young, tall, and unbelievably beautiful, emerged as though carved from moonlight. Her skin shimmered with a soft glow. Her hair streamed behind her like liquid silk, long enough to touch the water. Her face was calm, her eyes deep and shining like the river at midnight. She did not walk out. She glided. When she reached the riverbank, the water still clung to her feet like it did not want to let her go. Ethan stepped back without meaning to. He could not help it, she did not look human. She looked like the stories the elders used to tell. The stories of maidens from the river goddess who lived between the worlds of spirit and flesh. But she was silent. Completely silent. Ethan swallowed hard. His heart pounded so loudly he was afraid she could hear it. Who are you?" he asked softly. She did not answer. She only stared at him with an expression too calm for any human. Her eyes were unreadable, full of secrets, sadness, and something else he could not explain. Ethan tried again. Are you lost?" Still nothing. She tilted her head lightly, as though studying him, and the faintest smile touched her lips. It wasn't playful or shy. It was soft, mysterious, like she knew something he didn't. Ethan felt his breath catch in his throat. No woman he had ever seen looked like her. No human moved like she did. And no human stepped out of a river without being wet. Her gown, if one could call it that, looked like woven water. It clung to her gracefully but never soaked. He stepped forward slowly, not wanting to frighten her. "My name is Ethan," he said gently, placing a hand on his chest. "Ethan." She blinked once, acknowledging him, but still did not speak. Ethan hesitated, then asked, "Do you have a name?" No reply. But the smile returned, just for a second, before fading into her calm expression again. Ethan exhaled and nodded. "All right. If you don't want to speak, I will not force you. But I must call you something." He paused for a moment thinking. Then, with a soft smile of his own, he said, I will call you Liana. A gentle name for someone as mysterious as you. Her eyes widened slightly, as if she recognized the name or accepted it. A gentle wind moved again, brushing against both of them. The leaves resumed their soft rustling, the river flowed, and the world unstopped itself. But Liana remained still, silent, watching Ethan like he was the only thing she saw. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. It wasn't fear. It wasn't desire. It was a strange mixture of curiosity and awe, the feeling of standing before something bigger than himself. He slowly held out a hand. Will you come with me? At least until I know you're safe. To his shock, Liana stepped forward and took his hand. Her touch was cool, almost like touching water, but gentle. She walked beside him with quiet steps as he led her away from the river. She did not resist. Did not look back. She only held his hand and followed him like she somehow knew he would protect her. But the river behind them stirred violently the moment she stepped away. Waves rose as if reaching for her, unwilling to lose what belonged to them. Ethan didn't see it. His back was turned. But Liana did. Her glowing eyes dimmed with sorrow. The water splashed upward in a final desperate motion, but it was too late. She had already left the riverbank. And the balance of Alderaan shifted in that moment. Something ancient awakened beneath the depths. Something powerful. Something angry. But Ethan remained unaware. He only felt Liana's cool fingers resting in his hand. He felt calm for the first time in weeks. He felt as if he had found something he never knew he needed. As they approached the path toward the village, he whispered, I don't know who you are, but I promise I'll protect you. Liana looked at him slowly. Her expression softened into a faint smile again. But her eyes carried a warning Ethan did not understand yet. A warning that whispered, nothing taken from the river remains on land without a price. Ethan walked slowly toward the village with Liana by his side, still holding her hand as though she might disappear if he let go. The path to Alderaan was usually filled with people returning from the market, carrying baskets on their heads and talking loudly. But today the path was empty. Not a single traveler passed them. No voices, no laughter, only wind. Even the wind seemed restless, blowing in short, sharp breaths. The trees leaned away from Liana as if frightened of her presence. Birds sitting on branches took off in a flurry of feathers the moment she walked beneath them, circling high in the sky like frightened messengers. Ethan glanced around, confused by the strange behavior of nature, but he did not dare release her hand. He could not understand it, yet he felt responsible for her. When they reached the outskirts of the village, a few women pounding yam in wooden mortars noticed them and slowed their pounding. One of them, a round-faced elder named Mama Jenna, stopped completely and stared. Ethan, my son, who is that woman? She asked in a cautious tone. Before Ethan could answer, Liana simply stood still, her face calm, her expression unreadable. Mama Jenna's pounding stick slipped from her fingers and rolled away silently. She is someone I found by the river, Ethan said carefully. The women exchanged frightened glances. No ordinary woman walks out of that river, Mama Jenna whispered, backing away. No mortal maiden shines like that. Liana did not respond, but her eyes flickered with a trace of sadness. Ethan noticed and tightened his grip protectively around her hand. She is harmless, he insisted. The women did not look convinced. Inside the hut. When Ethan brought Liana into his hut, the interior lights dimmed as if reacting to her presence. The small oil lamp flickered, the flames dancing erratically. Shadows shifted on the walls in ways that did not match the fire's movement. Liana stood in the center of the hut, still silent, her eyes wandering over the simple decorations. Woven mats, dried herbs, a wooden stool, baskets, and Ethan's long spear hanging on the wall. She touched nothing. She simply observed, her expression calm but distant, as though she were half here and half somewhere deep beneath the river. Ethan set down a small clay cup filled with water. Here, he said gently. You must be thirsty. Liana looked at the cup and then at him. Slowly, she raised her hands and curled them around nothing, yet somehow the water in the cup lifted out on its own, rising like a floating stream. Ethan gasped softly as the water drifted toward her, forming a small sphere that hovered before her lips. She leaned forward slightly and the water dissolved into her skin, not through her mouth but through her cheeks and palms, absorbing like rain into soil. Ethan stepped back stunned. His heart pounded. What are you?" he whispered. Liana turned to him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim room. She said nothing. Instead, she gently placed a hand on his chest, her touch cool but comforting. He felt his heartbeat slow, his thoughts soften. His fear melt into something calm and strange. He exhaled shakily. "I'm not scared of you," he said, surprising himself. "I just want to understand." Liana lowered her hand and stepped back. She returned to her stillness, like a statue carved from moonlight. Moments later, footsteps hurried toward the hut. Martha arrives. Ethan's mother, Martha, burst inside the hut without knocking. She stopped abruptly the moment she saw Liana. Her eyes widened in shock, her lips parted in disbelief. "Ethan," she whispered, backing toward the door. "What have you done?" Ethan stood between them protectively. "Mother, relax. She is not dangerous." Martha shook her head slowly, her wrinkled hands trembling. She pointed at Liana with a shaking finger. "She is not of this world." Ethan, look at her face. Look at her eyes. That is not a human woman. "Mama. Do not mama me," she snapped sharply. "I raised you with the stories. You know what the elders say. No spirit leaves the river except for pain or purpose." Ethan swallowed hard. She was alone. I couldn't leave her. Martha turned her gaze to Liana again. Liana did not move. She did not blink. She watched Martha with the calmness of a deep ocean. "This is a mistake," Martha whispered. "You have brought an unknown spirit into your home." Ethan stepped closer to her. "She followed me. She did not fight me. She did not run away." "That is worse," Martha hissed. "A spirit that follows willingly is one bound by fate. And fate is dangerous." Ethan felt a shiver race down his spine. Signs of imbalance. As Martha spoke, a sharp crack echoed from outside the hut. All three turned. The clay pot outside had split open across the middle as though struck by lightning. Then another. Then another. 3 clay pots, sitting untouched, broken at the same moment. Martha clutched her chest. "It has begun," she whispered. "The imbalance." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What imbalance?" She pointed outside. "The river is tied to our land. When something sacred leaves its place, everything around it reacts. Clay breaks, animals hide. The wind moves strangely." As if to prove her point, a sudden gust of wind tore through the hut, knocking over a stool and scattering dried leaves everywhere. Liana did not move. The wind bent around her body, flowing around her like she was not even there. Ethan stared in disbelief. "But she's not hurting anyone." "Not yet," Martha murmured. "But the river will not remain silent forever." Liana slowly turned her gaze toward Ethan, her expression soft with something like apology or warning. ###the first nightmare. That night, Ethan lay beside the fire, but he could not sleep. The air felt heavy and thick. Every breath felt deep like he was underwater. Liana sat quietly in the corner of the hut, her knees drawn to her chest, her silver hair spread around her like a pool of water. Ethan's eyes finally closed. And immediately he found himself falling. Not through air, through water. He sank deeper and deeper, unable to breathe, unable to swim. Voices echoed around him, calling his name from every direction. "Ethan! Return what is ours. Bring her back." He tried to scream, but water filled his mouth. His chest burned. Dark shadows moved above him, swimming like spirits. Then suddenly a glowing hand touched his forehead. Liana. Her face appeared before him, calm and sad. Her lips moved silently as if speaking words he could not hear. Then everything went black. Waking to trouble. Ethan awoke with a loud gasp, sitting up abruptly. He was drenched in sweat, breathing hard. His heart felt like it was trying to escape his chest. He looked around wildly. Liana was still sitting in the corner, watching him with solemn eyes. Outside, the village roosters crowed, but something about their sound was off, shrill, panicked. Ethan stumbled outside and nearly collapsed at what he saw. The river, visible from his doorstep, had receded by several feet overnight. The stones on the riverbed glistened dry, exposed to the sun. Martha rushed toward him, panic on her face. "Do you see now?" she cried. "Do you finally see what your actions have caused?" Ethan stared at the river, frozen in shock. He whispered, "What have I done?" Behind him, Liana stepped outside slowly. Her feet touched the earth, and the ground glowed faintly beneath her. The river water stirred as if trying to reach out to her. And far downstream, a cold, angry voice echoed from the depths. "Return her." The curse had begun. The elders' warning ***. The sun rose that morning with an uneasy shade, half golden, half pale and washed out as if the sky itself were sick. A strange silence settled over Alderaan. No children's voices echoed near the riverbank. No fishermen cast their nets. Even the dogs hid beneath clay porches, refusing to bark. Word had spread quickly. Ethan had brought a river spirit into the village. He walked through the central square with Liana following silently behind him. Villagers watched from doorways, whispering to each other, some with fear, others with anger. "She drained the river. It is a curse. Send her back before we all suffer." Ethan clenched his jaw but kept walking. Liana's face remained calm, almost serene, but her eyes betrayed something. Hurt, confusion, perhaps even guilt. He wished he could speak for her. He wished she could speak for herself. The gathering hut. The elders sat waiting inside the large meeting hut at the center of the village. Incense smoke floated in small spirals upward through the roof opening. The walls were lined with carved masks representing ancient spirits. At the far end of the room sat Elder Kasim, the oldest man in Alderaan, his back bent but eyes sharp as a hawk's. To his left sat Elder Misi, known for her stern judgment. To his right sat Elder Dago, the storyteller who knew every legend by heart. The air was so still it felt heavy. When Ethan entered with Liana, all three elders stiffened. Elder Misi's voice cut through the quiet like a blade. "Why have you brought this being to our home, Ethan?" Ethan bowed his head respectfully. She needed help. She was alone. Elder Kasim tapped his wooden staff against the ground once. Slow, deliberate. "The river does not leave its own. If she is here, it is because something is broken." Elder Dago leaned forward. "Or something has been taken." Liana stood silently, her eyes drifting to the carved masks. Her presence caused a faint ripple through the smoke, bending it toward her like the incense recognized her. Misi pointed at her sharply. "Does she not speak?" Ethan shook his head. "Not in our tongue. Or maybe not at all. I don't know." Kasim studied Liana's face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "She understands us. And she carries sorrow." Dago cleared his throat. "There is an old story," he said, lifting a thin scroll from a woven basket. One that most in the village forgot because it was too frightening to remember. Ethan felt a chill. The elders never brought out the scrolls unless something was serious. The forgotten legend. Elder Dago unrolled the scroll slowly. The parchment crackled like dry leaves. "Long ago," he began, "the river guardians kept balance between land and water. Each guardian lived bound to the river, unable to leave unless chosen by fate." He pointed to an illustration, figures made of water with human shapes but glowing eyes. "One guardian left the river centuries ago," Dago continued. She fell in love with a mortal. And the river suffered. Crops died. Floods came. The land cracked. The guardian herself weakened. Ethan swallowed. Liana's expression tensed slightly. What happened to her? Ethan asked. Elder Dago's voice softened. She died. And the mortal she loved died with her. Liana closed her eyes. Elder Kasim raised his staff again. Do you understand the danger now, Ethan? If she forms any bond with you, even unintentionally, it could unravel the river again. Ethan stepped protectively in front of Liana. I'm not in danger. She isn't hurting me. No, Misi said, leaning forward with a hard stare. But you are hurting her. Ethan blinked. What do you mean? Elder Mace pointed at Liana. Look at her skin. It is dimming. Ethan turned. She was right. The faint glow Liana had when she first left the river had faded. Her silver hair, once bright as moonlight, now looked pale. Her movements seemed slower, heavier. What's happening to her? He asked, panicked. Kasim spoke gravely. She is bound to the water. Without it she weakens. If she stays in the village too long, she will vanish. Ethan's chest tightened. Liana was dying. #### the choice. Elder Misi stepped forward. We give you 1 day, Ethan. 1 day to return her to the river willingly. If you fail, we will perform the rite of sending. Ethan stiffened. What is that? A ritual, Dago said quietly. To force a spirit back to its realm. Whether it wants to go or not. Liana's eyes widened with a flicker of fear. A first sign of emotion Ethan had seen. No, Ethan said. You cannot harm her. Kasim's voice rumbled. We do not wish to. But the land must survive. People must survive. The river must survive. Misi stepped closer to Liana. Spirit, do you understand what will happen if you remain here? Liana nodded slowly. Her eyes met Ethan's, and in them he saw something unexpected. Trust, fear, and a plea. Martha entered the hut suddenly, her face pale. Ethan, come outside. You need to see this. #### the river's anger. Ethan hurried out. Liana followed the moment he moved. At the riverbank, villagers gathered in panic. The shallow water surged violently, thrashing in unpredictable waves. It was as if the river was breathing, angry, uneven breaths. Then, without warning, a column of water shot upward, twisting into a spiral like a serpent rising from the deep. Gasps and screams filled the air. Children clung to their mothers. Fishermen dropped their nets. The water column shaped itself into a towering figure, faceless but unmistakably alive. A booming voice echoed from within it. Return what belongs to the river. Villagers dropped to their knees. Ethan stood frozen. Liana stepped beside him, her body trembling. The water figure turned toward her, its voice deep and endless. Daughter of the deep, you have left your place. You must return. Liana did not move. Ethan grabbed her hand. No. She's not your prisoner. The water giant surged forward, roaring louder. She is bound to the river. And the river is bound to her. She stays with you. You both will fall. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The water crashed down, drenching the riverbank before dissolving back into the current. Silence followed. Then Elder Kasim's voice cut through the silence behind him. Ethan, now you see. You do not have a choice. Ethan turned to Liana. She stared at him with a mix of sorrow and something deeper, something he couldn't name. He whispered, voice breaking. What do we do? Liana stepped closer. She placed her cool hand on his chest, exactly over his heart. For the first time since he met her, she spoke. Her voice was soft, melodic, barely above a whisper. Choose. The price of the river ****. Night fell faster than usual. It was as if the sky wanted to hide from what was coming. Dark clouds swirled above Alderaan, thick and restless, casting long shadows across the village. Lanterns flickered nervously in the wind. The river rumbled in the distance like thunder trapped underwater. Ethan stood at the riverbank with Liana beside him. The moonlight brushed across her fading glow, revealing how weak she had become. Her body almost translucent, her hair dull like mist losing its form. He could see through her. That terrified him more than anything. "You're disappearing," Ethan whispered. Liana did not look at him. She watched the river with silent sorrow. Her expression calm but her eyes full of ancient pain. Ethan stepped closer. "You don't have to go." This time she shook her head slowly. The first real denial she'd ever shown him. He reached out to hold her hand. She let him, but her touch was lighter than before. Almost weightless, like he was holding a handful of cool air instead of a living being. "Please," he whispered. "Talk to me. Help me understand." Liana turned to him and placed her hand gently on his cheek. Her touch was cool, soothing, and as she spoke again, her voice was softer than before, like the last echo of a distant song. "Ethan, you saved me. And now you must free me." His heart thudded painfully. "No. I can't lose you." Liana's eyes shone with a quiet sadness. "Love is not losing. Love is letting go." Ethan froze. He hadn't said he loved her, but she felt it. And worse, he realized he felt it too. ##### The elders arrive. Footsteps sounded behind them. Elder Kasim, Misi, and Dago approached with the villagers following at a cautious distance. Silver lanterns bobbed like fireflies in the crowd. The faces were pale and tense. Elder Misi's voice trembled. "Ethan, the river grows violent. The storms are rising. If we do not act now." "I said I will handle it," Ethan interrupted firmly. Kasim struck his staff against the earth, making a sharp crack. "You cannot bend the will of the river." "I don't need to bend it," Ethan said. "I just need to understand it." Liana's voice wavered as she whispered, "Ethan." But he held up a hand gently. "Please, let me try." The elders hesitated. The villagers watched with wide, frightened eyes. Ethan took a breath and stepped forward. ##### The river answers. He faced the water. It churned darkly, swirling with unnatural current. Thunder growled above. The moon vanished behind thick clouds. Ethan raised his voice. "River, spirit, whatever you are, listen to me." The waters went still for a moment, as if shocked by his boldness. Then a low rumble vibrated through the ground. Ripples spread toward him, faster and faster. The water rose again, this time larger, more furious, forming a towering figure of twisting waves and mist. Its voice boomed across the land. "Mortal, you defy the current of fate." Ethan held his ground. "I don't defy fate. I protect the one who needs me." The water giant roared, sending spray into the air. The villagers screamed and scattered back. Ethan didn't move. "You say she belongs to the river," he shouted. "But she walked out of it. She came to me. She chose her own path." The giant thundered back. "She is bound by an ancient law. She cannot survive on land." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then change the law." The giant surged violently. "The river does not change for love." Ethan's voice cracked. "Then you have never known love." Lightning split the sky. The water giant leaned closer, its shape trembling with anger. But then something unexpected happened. Liana stepped between Ethan and the water giant. Her body glowed brighter than it had all day, like the last flare of a dying star. She raised her hand, and the water stilled instantly, frozen in place in midair. The villagers gasped. The elders fell silent. Ethan stared stunned. Liana's voice echoed with strength, not weakness. "I choose." The river giant shifted uncertainly. "Daughter of the deep." Liana lifted her chin. "I choose him." The giant's form flickered violently, the waves surging in confusion. Ethan's heart thudded. Did she truly mean it? The price revealed asterisk. The water giant lowered its voice. Then the price must be paid. Liana nodded. I know. Ethan grabbed her arm. What price? No, wait, Liana. She turned to him slowly. Her glow faded again and her eyes softened. For a guardian to become human, she whispered, the river must take something equal. Ethan felt his blood run cold. What does that mean? But Liana only looked at him with a sad, gentle smile. It must take a heart. Ethan shook his head fiercely. No, absolutely not. You misunderstand, Liana said softly. It must take my heart, my power, my life within the water. His breath choked in his throat. You'll die. She nodded calmly. If I return to the water, yes. Ethan grabbed her shoulders. Then don't go back. Stay here. Stay with me. She cupped his face in her cool hands. Ethan. If I stay without returning to the water, the land will die. Your people will die. You will die. His heart broke. Please, he whispered. There has to be another way. She gave a small, sad smile. There is. Ethan looked up sharply. What do I have to do? She hesitated just a moment. Then she reached for his hand and placed it against her chest. Her heartbeat was faint, barely there. You can choose to give me part of yours. Ethan froze. What? If you give me part of your life, she said gently, I can remain. Not fully human, not fully spirit, but alive, bound to this world. He swallowed hard. Will it hurt you? No, she said with a soft smile. It will hurt you. Ethan stared into her eyes. They were full of sorrow, but also hope. He realized then. He would give anything for her. Even part of himself. He took her hands firmly. Then take it. Liana's eyes widened with shock. Ethan, you don't understand. If you do this, your life will shorten. Your strength will fade. You may die young. He smiled faintly. Then I'll live fast. And I'll live with you. She stared at him for a long moment, long enough for the storm to pause around them. Then she nodded. ### the binding ritual. The water giant raised its arms, forming a circle of swirling water around them. The wind whipped violently. The elders shielded their faces. Villagers watched in awe and terror. Liana stepped closer to Ethan. Close your eyes, she whispered. He did. Her hands pressed against his chest. A strange warmth flowed into him, spreading through his ribs, spine, lungs. His breath caught as a sharp pain struck, brief but intense, like his chest had been opened by invisible light. He gasped. Liana's voice trembled. Just a little more. The river roared as the water giant absorbed the glowing fragments of her power. Ethan's knees buckled. She caught him. He felt weak, dizzy, but he kept standing. For her. A blinding flash tore through the sky. And then, silence. Complete silence. Slowly, Ethan opened his eyes. Liana stood before him. Not glowing, not fading, not transparent. Human. Her skin warm. Her hair heavy and real. Her eyes soft with emotion. She breathed in deeply, her first true breath of air. She smiled. And Ethan felt a dull ache in his chest but a warmth in his heart. It was done. The river giant dissolved back into the water, whispering. The balance is restored. The river calmed. Clouds parted. Moonlight spilled across the land. The villagers stared in awe. Elder Kasim bowed his head. The river has accepted your choice. Ethan looked at Liana. Her hand slipped into his. She whispered, Thank you. He whispered back, voice weak but sure. I choose you again. ### Epilogue of Chapter 4. The night ended with peace. The river flowed gently again. Liana stood at Ethan's side, human, fragile and real. The villagers kept their distance at first, uncertain, cautious. But they saw the river calm. They saw the balance restored. And slowly they accepted her. Ethan's body felt weaker, But his soul felt stronger. He had paid a price. But it was a price he did not regret. And Liana, once a spirit of the river, now had a place in the world of humans, because Ethan had offered her a piece of his life. The final whisper of the night breeze carried her soft words to him. This is only the beginning.